When the music fades, all is stripped away, and I simply come, longing just to bring something that's of worth, that will bless your heart. I'll bring you more than a song, for a song in itself is not what you have required. You search much deeper within, as I know from your word. You're looking into my heart. I'm coming back to the heart of worship, and it's all about you. It's all about you, Yahuah. I thank you, Yah, for your precious name. And it's all about you. It's all about you, Yahuah. King of endless world, no one could express how much you deserve. Though I'm weak and poor, all I have is yours, every single breath. I'll bring you more than a song, for a song in itself is not what you have required. You search much deeper within, though I know from the word you're looking into my heart. I'm coming back to the heart of worship, and it's all about you. It's all about you, Yahuah. I thank you, Yah, for your precious name, and it's all about you. It's all about you, Yahuah. I'm coming back to the heart of worship, and it's all about you. It's all about you, Yahuah. I thank you, Yah, for your precious name, and it's all about you. It's all about you, Yahuah. It's all about you. I'm coming back to the heart of worship, and it's all about you. It's all about you, Yahuah. I thank you, Yah, for your precious name, and it's all about you. It's all about you, Yahuah. I'm coming back to the heart of worship, and it's all about you. It's all about you, Yahuah. I thank you, Yah, for your precious name, and it's all about you. It's all about you, Yahuah. It's all about you. It's all about you, Yahuah.
Hear, O Israel, Yahuah our Elohim. Yahuah is one, and you shall love Yahuah your Elohim with all your heart, and with all your being, and with all your might. And these words which I am commanding you today shall be in your heart, and you shall impress them upon your children, and shall speak of them when you sit in your house, and when you walk by the way, and when you lie down, and when you rise up, and shall bind them as a sign on your hand, and they shall be as frontlets between your eyes. And you shall write them on the doorpost of your house and on your gates. And the second one is like it. You shall love Yahuah. You shall love your neighbor as yourself. Hallelujah. Hallelujah. Shabbat shalom, everybody. Glad to see y'all here. Yeah, it's not quite Shabbat here in Texas yet, but this is a very special Shabbat coming up, as we're going to have a double hitter. It's going to be the first day of Tabernacles, which is also a Shabbat. It is a feast. It's a festival, one of the last of the three pilgrimages, the last of the three festivals. Okay. So very, very exciting time coming up here. Very special. And that's what we're going to talk about this evening too, by the way. Everybody, knows about tabernacles, and most, we've all heard the different labels that's applied to this Kadesh Mikra, this appointed time, if you will, such as tabernacle, booth, or booths, tents, sukuth, the grand finale of all the festivals, or the grand finale of all the appointed times. It's the Shabbat of all Shabbats. Is not really applied to tabernacles, though. It's more along the lines of being applied to Yom Kippur, or Day of Atonement, which we had just passed through. The Day of Atonement was a short 5 days ago, and here we're getting ready to enter into the Feast of Tabernacles. So we all know the basics here. We put up a booth or a tent, and we stay in it for 7 days, right? And we observe basically creation. It's really about the first 7 days of creation in the booths, or it relates to the lifespan of a human. The 8th day is outside of the booths. It's really on the 8th day, or the 8th millennium, which is really immortality, eternity, the eternal reign. And the 7 days, the first 7 days, which we stay in our tents, is really applies to the first 7 millenniums. And so the 7th day would be, particularly the 7th day would be relating to the millennium reign. But really the entire festival of Tabernacles is all about the millennium reign. Now, some people, and I agree, that there is some passages in Revelations that lead us to believe that Tabernacles, at least some of it, is referencing post-millennium. In other words, after the great white throne judgment has come, and we're off into an eternal reign. And I could agree, especially when we get into Revelations 20 and 22. There seems to be implications applying that. But for the most part, I think Revelations and quite a few other places in the Netzin writings is pointing at tabernacles. So the Feast of Tabernacles and Revelations, it goes hand in hand pretty good. We'll hit on some of that this evening, and as we get into our study on Revelations, we'll see it even more as we progress through that study. Okay, so it's more than just putting up a booth or a tent and staying in it for 7 days, okay? That's the basic literal understanding of the children of that Yahuah led the children out of Egypt and caused them to stay in temporary dwellings in the wilderness, and this is what it helps us to remember that he freed his people from bondage and caused them to stay in temporary booths. Okay, but that's just the tip of the iceberg. Tabernacles goes real deep. It's very broad. It covers so much. We can't even begin to cover it all this evening. So I'm going to hit on some of the finer points and some of the things maybe that we're not so familiar with, maybe things that we're lacking. I don't hear people talking about certain things pertaining to tabernacles very much. And so I'm going to try to hit on some of that stuff and then eventually get into the spiritual implications of tabernacles, which is really the most important, especially for those of us who are in the everlasting covenant. Okay, we have to remember that. We're not in training anymore. Okay, we're not in training. We're not under discipline. We're not part of the old covenant anymore. We're in the new covenant now, okay? And so we've passed over. Remember, those who were in training that came out of Mitzrayim, out of the world, weren't allowed to cross over. Only the children were allowed to cross over, okay? So keep that in mind. Those of us who are in the everlasting covenant, we have progressed beyond the literal now. Okay, we're in a spiritual walk. And so these appointed times for us takes a leap, okay, into a spiritual dimension where truth and love resides. And for our meaning that we seek out is that's where it's at. That's where we'll find it. I think some of us lose focus on that. And there's some other things too that I think causes confusion and misunderstandings and so forth and so on. I'm not going to cover all that this evening. That's something everybody needs to study more about these appointed times, about the everlasting covenant, and where the election are in this progress, and how does this affect us? Okay. And you need to study that on your own, and you need to come up with more truth. Go beyond the literal, because what you're seeking is beyond the literal, and you got to go there to find it. Okay. So, I'm going to touch on some spiritual things for sure. But I'm not going to do your homework for you. You're going to have to start studying on your own, because every year this stuff comes up and people argue and they fight and they disagree. And because they're at the same place, they remain stagnant. There's no growth from year to year. concerning the knowledge of these appointed times. And it's kind of disheartening, but it's also understandable. We are brought up observing false teachings, holidays, pagan traditions, things like this. And so although most of us have flushed this old wine out, we still are in the same process of analyzing things, and it goes into these appointed times as well. And so there seems to be a need for some type of religious stuff that's out there, outside practices that they need to bring into these appointed times to make themselves feel like they're accomplishing something or they know something. And then we need to drop that. We need to get rid of that. Okay. There's a much deeper, broader meaning behind these for those in the everlasting covenant. It's not all about the literal religious practices of the Pharisees or the training and discipline of those that came out of Egypt and crossed over the Sea of Reeds, which, by the way, had to be extremely close to where they were residing. Anyway, I don't want to get off on that tangent. So I'm going to start off here with identifying why the children of Israel were chosen to do these things to begin with. And then we're going to go see what Yahuah has to say about all this. And maybe by doing that, we can eliminate some of our misunderstandings, some of our fears, some of our doubts, and start dumping out some old wine as we go through this study this evening. But before we get started, let me say hello to a few people. All righty, Sandra, glad you're here, sister. Peggy Russell, glad to see you back, sister. Mr. Three Jobs, glad you're here, John. Singing Bird, glad you're here. Brother Lou, glad you're here. Sister Phyllis, glad you're here. Ladder Rain, glad you made it. Brother Dave Messenger, glad you're here. Kate Connell, glad you're here, sister. And Ronald Sternberg, glad you're here, brother. Chad from Texas, glad you're here, brother. Valerie, glad you're here, sister. Stephen Curran, glad you're here, brother. All righty. So we have a few people trickling in here, but we're going to get started this evening. I don't anticipate this being too long of a study, but it could easily turn into one. So be patient and get as much of this covered as we can. Like I said, I'm going to try to stay with things that are less known than just merely sleeping in a tent for 7 days or eating in a tent, worshiping you in a tent for 7 days, however you perceive it. With that said, I just want to say that we all have our own minds and we're all in a personal relationship with Yahuah. So we really don't get to tell people how to worship Yahuah. That's between them and Yahuah. All right. And we shouldn't do that. If we're asked, well, what do you do? And if you feel like answering it, you can. You don't have to, but they can ask. Don't have to answer, but if you wish to answer, then you could answer. Let them know what you do. But we shouldn't try to force our belief or what we do to worship you on someone else by excessive force. We need to back off and let them have their relationship with Yahuah as well. None of us are Nickelodeons here. We're not dictators. Okay, the Netzarim are just in a brotherhood. We're here to help others, especially younger brothers and sisters that are just coming into it. But we surely don't want to force our will upon other people. So I just want to put that out there as well. So according to your understanding and your relationship with your Elohim, you do what you feel you should do. All right. And he'll lead you beyond that if it's his will to do so. All right. So with that said, what's written in Scripture is written in Scripture. Okay. And we need to understand that if it's written, especially if it's commanded for us to do, then we must obey. And that's one of the things that we're going to get into that a little bit this evening as well. The hard part is trying to figure out whether or not some of these things that is written still applies to us or not. When I say us, I mean those are in the everlasting covenant. Okay, we are now crossed over. We're not in this old group anymore called the old covenant or the old priesthood or the training, the ones that were in training. They're being trained by Torah. We're no part of that group anymore. Those people weren't even allowed to cross over. Only the children were. Okay, so keep all that in mind. Don't feel like there's a structured, outlined list or rules that you have to go by and apply in your life just because somebody else does that. Okay, be a Berean. Take it for face value until you do research on your own in the scriptures to find out if that's what Yahushua's telling you or not. He does things with people differently because we're all different characteristics, different personalities. We're all on different walks. We're all on different levels. Although we're all one body, we're different components. And so he works through everybody, differently, in different degrees, different levels, things like that over different periods of time, even, and ages, and experiences, their life experiences, and that he's trained them through their life experience to get them to where he wants them. And they're on a different relationship path with Yahuah than we are. We got to remember all this. We're not robots. Okay, so we have to respect each other and each other's level of understanding and our level of spirituality. So because we don't want to come off foolish either, okay? And sometimes we do. So we have to watch what we're doing, saying. All right. And there's nothing wrong with taking somebody as a somebody to look up to and follow along with in order to learn more and stuff like that. Everybody kind of needs that, especially at first, But then we're also required to mature and get in a one-on-one personal relationship with Yahuah and start listening to him and following him as our mediator or our example, if you will. Okay. So let's all chill out. We all have different understandings. We're all at different levels. You see somebody doing something you disagree with, keep it to yourself. There's no use in hurting their feelings. Okay. Maybe you're wrong. Maybe you just think you're right. So stay reserved. Stay humble and walk with Yahuah. Yahuah's got it all under control, man. He's always in control. He knows what he's doing. We don't need to interrupt the process, especially when it comes to someone else. Okay. So the get back over here now where I was at. The more basics of this study this evening here is found here in Lou White's track. And I've showed this before. Y'all should be familiar. Appointed Times, 2023, comes out with them every single year. Baruch Lou for doing this. It's extremely helpful. And I don't know what we do without Lou White. I mean, he shares a lot of knowledge and powerful stuff with us all the time. And we should all thank Yahuah for him and for his work through Brother Lou. So the more basic stuff here is in this, and I'm saying basic because it's just within these 2 paragraphs. That's all he gives us on tabernacles, but he puts a lot of stuff in those little 2 paragraphs. So very quickly, the first day of tabernacles is Yahusha's birthday. That's when baby Yahushua was born. I think this is a very important thing to know. Some of us forget about that, right? But in fact, it is his birthday was on the first day of tabernacles. So Yahushua was born on the first day of Sukkot, which is going to happen here shortly, as soon as the evening comes. And he was circumcised then according to the strict Torah, regulations of the Torah, on the 8th day. So he would have been born on the first day of tabernacles, circumcised on the 8th day of tabernacles. All right, that plays a huge spiritual role in this observance of this appointed time. So keep all that in mind. And so it goes on to say here then that Sukkot is a Sabbath. It is a high one. It's a rest day. It happens the 15th day of the 7th month in the Hebrew calendar. On the Roman calendar, it would be this sunset, September 29th, and it goes through sunset on September 30th, would be the end of the Sabbath, okay? And so it falls on this weekly Sabbath, so they both start and end at the same time this year, okay? This observation reminds us of Israel living in tents for the 40 years and even longer, really, but looks forward to the consummation of the wedding feast at the return of Yahushua HaMashiach on the day of Yahuah. Following the Great Tribulation and judgment of the unrighteous. So Yahushua was born on this day, the first day of tabernacles, in a temporary dwelling. So the 8th day, the closing day of the festival, or the 8th day, is also the Sabbath. Okay, and this year that would be on October 6th, sunset, through sunset October 7th, which would be in Hebrew the 22nd day of the 7th month. It's also, this 8th day is also called the last great day. Why? Because it ends it. It's the end of all the festivals. They're all done. All 7 have been done at this point. Okay, you're not going to go back through them until the next year begins. For this year, It's the last great day of the appointed times, the festivals. Okay, this is, like I said, is the third festival of the year, and it's celebrated on the first day of Tabernacles and goes through the seventh day. But all 7 days is not a Shabbat. Okay, just the first day is. Okay, so then after the seventh day ends, the eighth day or the last great day is a Sabbath. It's a Shabbat. Okay, so Yahushua was circumcised on the eighth day after his birth, and this eighth day looks forward to a renewed creation, or a new creation, even where righteousness dwells. All hearts will be circumcised with a love for Torah. Okay, so what's this saying to us then? If you really think about it, the first 7 days represents our lifetime, or the creation week. You can look at it either way. Okay, so the first 7 days, the creation week, or lifetime of a man. Okay, they represent 7 millenniums, or 7,000 years. So obviously the first 6 would be the reign of man in Hashatan, and then the 7th day would be represent the millennium reign, and the 8th day would be post white throne judgment and represent their eternity. All those that will be going off into eternity with Yahuah and live forever. Okay, so all this is what represents, Tabernacles represents all this. Okay, now, like I said, it can be post white throne judgment as far as Revelations 20 and 22 goes, but then it would be post second coming of Yahushua, and before the white throne, it would be the millennium reign, or the 7th day, or the 7th millennium reign of Yahushua, in which this is where Tabernacles really hits on quite a bit. There's a representation of that. So we got to keep that all in mind too. All right, so we all seeing that, I hope. And so that's why we don't stay in our tents or our booths on the 8th day. So we stay in them first day, second day, third day, fourth day, fifth day, sixth day, even the 7th day, because there's still flesh and blood going to be in the millennium reign. We still be in temporary booths or temporary bodies of flesh, temporary tents, dwelling places. But on the 8th day, we come out of those temporary dwelling places and we put on immortality. So the 8th day is celebration of immortality and receiving our immortal bodies that we've been waiting on. Okay, because flesh and blood cannot inherit the reign of Yahuah. It ends after the 7th millennium. All right. Okay, so let's get started then in scriptures. And I'm going to pause and show a few videos if I can swing it. Just short ones, like 3 or 4 minute ones, and some other things. But mostly we're going to see what Yahuah has to say about all this, because it's more important than what any other man can ever tell us. All right, so this start off in Exodus 19. So if everybody would like to turn to Exodus 19. This started verse 4, and we're not going to go too far into this, but probably up to maybe 11. I just want you to see why we have to do all these things. Why us, right? Why do we have to do this, right? The pagans don't have to do it. Why we got to do it? So let's find out why. So here we go. Exodus 19:4. You have seen what I did to the Mitzrites and how I bore you on eagle's wings and brought you to myself. And now, if you diligently obey my voice and shall guard my covenant, then you shall be my treasured possession above all the peoples. Wow. Okay, so now he's telling us if we guard his covenant and diligently obey his voice, he's going to make us his treasured possession. Wow. How many here wants to be Yahuwah's treasured possession? Man, that's unbelievable. He put everything belongs to him. The entire universe and everything in it, the entire Eretz and everything in it belongs to Yahuwah. And he's telling you, if you do listen to his voice and obey his and guard his covenant, that he's going to make you a treasured possession above all people. For all the Eretz is mine, and you shall be to me a reign of priests, and a set apart nation. So here you go. Now, what's he doing? He's choosing people to be priests for him, to make up a set apart nation, to be his treasured possessions above all people. This is why we do the things that we do. That we have to obey him, hear his voice, heed to his voice, and do all these things because we've been chosen as treasured possessions of his. Reign with him as priests over others and be a set apart nation to Yahuwah. Set apart from everybody else, like Yahuwah is. It's very powerful stuff, man. So a kingdom of priests, set apart nation, Yesharel, rulers with Yah. Mind blowing, right? Okay. So that's why we have to do the things that he's asking us to do. With this type of gifts, these type of things he's given us and appointing us as, don't you agree that we should do these things that he says to do in order to set us apart from everyone else? Not only for us to know who we are, for Yahuwah to know who we are, but for all the other people to know who we are. Sounds like a very small price to me to pay in order to be a treasured possession of Yahuwah. Those are the words which you are to speak to the children of Yisrael. And Moshe came and called for the elders of the people and set before them all these words which Yahuwah commanded him. And all the people answered together and said, all that Yahuwah has spoken we shall do. So Moshe brought back the words of the people to Yahuwah. And Yahuwah said to Moshe, see, I am coming to you in the thick cloud, so that the people hear when I speak with you and believe you forever. And Moshe reported the words of the people to Yahuwah. And Yahuwah said to Moshe, go to the people and set them apart today and tomorrow. And they shall wash their garments and shall be prepared by the third Yom. And on the third Yom, Yahuwah shall come down from Mount Sinai before the eyes of all the people. And he did. Okay, so very powerful. This is why we were required to do the things that we do. And I think it's a very small price. I'm willing to do it to be his treasured possession. I hope all of you are too. Only makes sense, right? So this when he says when they agree to do all things that Yahuwah said, it means everything, really, all the mitzvot, really, everything that applies to an individual, and ultimately then the 10 love commands, or the everlasting covenant, enter into a marriage covenant with Yahuwah and marry him and agree to be the bride that he desires. Okay. And to be loyal and trustworthy to our husband. So with that said, let's everybody turn to Deuteronomy 5 real quick. I want you to see here that this is a list here. We could call our marriage covenant, the everlasting covenant, the 10 love commands. We could call them 10 words, the 10 to bar them, and other things. But what I want you to see here is that Yahuah it told Moshe to assemble the people, okay, and to tell them what the deal is, okay. So they said they would obey before they even knew what the deal was. So Yahuah says, okay, you want to make the deal? Let me tell you what it consists of. And so here in Deuteronomy 5, Moses is again repeating those commandments that were given in Exodus 20. So, and Moshe called all Yisrael and said to them, "Hear, O Yisrael, the laws and right rulings which I speak to your hearing today, and you shall learn them and guard to do them." So that's really important right there, just to hear that right there. So, and you shall learn them and guard to do them. Some people may be saying, what's this got to do with tabernacles? A whole lot. You're going to see later on why. Yahuah, or Elohim, made a covenant with us in Karib. Yahuah did not make this covenant with our fathers, but with us, those who are here today, all of us who are alive. Yahuah spoke with you face to face on the mountain from the midst of the fire. I stood between Yahuah and you at the time to declare to you the word of Yahuah. For you were afraid because of the fire, and you did not go up to the mountain, saying, I am Yahuah, your Elohim, who brought you out of the land of Mitzrayim, out of the house of bondage. You have no other mighty ones against my face. You do not make for yourself a carved image, any likeness of which is in the Shemayim above, or which is in the Eretz beneath, or which is in the Mayim under the Eretz. You do not bow down to them nor serve them. For I, Yahuah, your Elohim, am a jealous all, visiting the crookedness of the fathers upon the children to the third and fourth generations of those who hate me, but showing kindness to thousands to those who love me and guard my commands. You do not bring the name of Yahuah your Elohim to ruin, for Yahuah does not leave him unpunished who brings his name to ruin. Guard Yom Shabbat, to set it apart, as Yahuah your Elohim commanded you. 6 Yamim you labor and shall do all your work, but the 7th Yom is the Shabbat of Yahuah your Elohim. You do not do any work, you, nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your male servant, nor your female servant, nor your ox, nor your donkey, nor any of your cattle, nor your stranger who is within your gates, so that your male servant and your female servant rest as you do. So he's holding, on this 4th command here, you can see it's your. So he's holding the boss, okay, or the commander, or the head of the household, or anyone who holds authority over anyone else. He's holding them responsible for those people under his authority to keep Shabbat. So if you make somebody work because you have authority over them to do so, that sin's on your head, because you're the one being commanded not to do that. The person that you're making work, when he doesn't want to work, he desires to rest and worship Yahushua. Guess what you're doing? You're preventing him from doing that because you have authority over him. You're taking that sin upon yourself. So all you bosses out there, all you commanders, all you heads of households, you better take that literally, because Yahuah is not going to hold you guiltless for you making somebody work on his Shabbat. And you shall remember that you were a slave in the land of Mitzrayim, and that Yahuah your Elohim brought you out from there by a strong hand and by an outstretched arm. Therefore Yahuah your Elohim commanded you to observe Yom Shabbat. Respect your father and your mother, as Yahuah your Elohim has commanded you, so that your Yamim are prolonged, and so that it is well with you on the soil which Yahuah your Elohim is giving you. So here on this fifth command, we're seeing that it comes with a promise that if you respect your father and your mother, that Yahuah will give you longevity. You do not murder, you do not break wedlock, and you do not steal. You do not bear false witness against your neighbor. You do not covet your neighbor's asha, nor do you desire your neighbor's house, his field, nor his male servant, nor his female servant, his ox, nor his donkey, or whatever belongs to your neighbor. That's pretty cut and dry. I say that because you notice there's not a whole lot of instructions about anything else as far as being in the everlasting covenant. Okay? So we cannot. Now listen to this. This is extremely important right here. Perhaps if you don't remember anything else of tonight's study, maybe you should remember this. Okay? It's in Deuteronomy 5, verse 22. Those words Yahuah spoke. Now, so Yahuah spoke them words to all your assembly in the mountain from the midst of the fire, of the cloud, and of the thick darkness, with a loud voice. And he added no more. And he wrote them on 2 tablets of stone and gave them to me. So here now, Yahuah spoke these words, and he added no more. Okay, so this is a huge indicator to anyone. We are not allowed to cherry pick a verse, remove it, extract it from where we found it from, and act like it's an addendum to these commandments and attach it to any of these commandments. If Yahuah didn't say it, it does not apply. If he did say it, you're not allowed to subtract it. I hope everyone's hearing that loud and clear. He added no more, and you better not either. Leave it alone. These weren't your words. These were the words of Yahuah. And he added no more. We cannot cherry pick a verse and attach it to any of these debarim, it's 10 debarim, and act like we just added an addendum to it. If you do that, you will have mercy on your soul. Okay, let's go now over to Leviticus. Keep all this in mind. It's going to make sense as we continue on here now. So let's go to Leviticus 23, everybody. Get a good look at Leviticus 23 now. So Leviticus 23 is basically talking to us about all of Yahuwah's appointed times. Okay? And there's 8 of them. He gives us instructions on all 8 right here. So we have to be very aware of what he's saying here for each appointed time. Okay? And we start off with the first. See, the first appointed time that we ever came across, and the first one mentioned in Leviticus 23, is the weekly Shabbat. So we received that way back around Genesis 2. This was an appointed time that we were to observe and keep. But it seems to me that people have added to it, subtracted from it, ignored it, mocked it, changed it. It's been kicked around pretty hard. And so I think the results are people are fearful and unsure. And so they do things to be safe. They want to play it safe, and so they overdo it, overreach. And when they try to substantiate this stuff, they don't really study it slowly, carefully, and deliberately enough to put any type of meaning behind what they're doing and even teaching others to do. Okay, so I'm not going to get really heavy into that because, like I said, Yahuah has people running at their own levels and according to their own life experiences. Okay, and sometimes people have to live under discipline in order to be obedient. And that sometimes can be another reason why people believe the way they believe and observe the appointed times the way they observe them. Okay, and probably 100 other reasons. Okay, so let's just keep that in mind, and let's see what Yahuah says here. So Leviticus 23. And Yahuah spoke to Moses, saying, speak to the children of Yisrael and say to them, the appointed times of Yahuah, which you are to proclaim as Kadesh Mikra, my Modim, are these. So here you go. Now he's telling Moses, okay, I'm going to give you my appointed times, my Modim, okay, my appointed times, and they're Kadesh Mikra. What's that mean? That means they're proclamation, they're an assembly, they're a celebration, okay. And so what's this saying when we read Kadesh Mikra, set apart Mikra? That means there's some activity going on. Activity. It's not a dead, silent, hang your head down, beat yourself in the gut, throw ashes on your head type thing. Okay, this is celebrate. This is happiness, joy. Yahuwah is going to give somebody back their joy and their laughter this evening. Somebody's getting it back, man. They're going to laugh again. So there's activity going on here, man, on these appointed times. Kadesh Mikra, rehearsal, acting, something, doing something, some kind of activity here involved. Are these? So here we go. Here's the first one. 6 Yom work is done, but the 7th Yom is the Shabbat of rest, a Kadesh Mikra, proclamation, assembly, convocation. Something's going on, activity. Assembly. Kadesh Mikra. You do no work. That means you don't go out and make money. You do not go out and do anything to make money. If you sit there and make a quilt or do a painting or a portrait, but you're not charging money that day, you're just doing the work, but in your mind, you're planning on making money off of that, making gains off of that next week or a later date when you go to a book show or something and then sell it. Oh, you're violating Shabbat. Can you sit there and make a quilt for yourself that you're not going to sell? You have no thought of selling it? Yeah, I think you can. Especially if you're praying to Yahuah continuously while you're making it, or making it to Yahuah, perhaps even. Okay? But you're not allowed to do any work to make money. That's what I'm saying. Now, there's also, we're going to run across no servile work, which is kind of the same thing. But to me, do no work means you're working for money. You're getting, you're being, you're getting something for doing your work, whether it's money or something else as in a trade. Don't matter. You're still doing it to profit. Okay. So you can't do that. Do no servile work is basically the same thing, except I believe it's for servitile means being a servant. So what do servants do? They still work, but they don't get paid. A servant is using someone who works that doesn't get paid. Now, can a servant get paid? Yes. I'm not saying they can't. I'm just saying to me, it's more like, and I'm going to use this just as an example here, is if some men are used to, especially if they're in a large family setting, maybe used to their wife making their plate. She cooks the dinner, she makes his plate and comes over and sets it down while he's sitting at the table and serves him. Okay, so if it's a no servile work, then the wife shouldn't do that. That husband needs to get off his lazy butt, walk over there and serve himself and take his plate and go sit back down and eat it. He shouldn't force his wife, his manservant, his maidservant, his children, anybody to serve him when it says no servile work. Okay, so to me, see, there's the difference. Can it be both? Yes. Can it be one or the other? Yes. Okay, so you do no work. That means you're not allowed to make money or trade for anything. Okay, you're not allowed to even think about it. Shouldn't even think about your business or to discuss business matters with your brother or anybody. You should forget about business dealings altogether, and definitely don't try to make any money, not even on the internet. You can go on the internet and sell something and make money. You shouldn't do that. Okay, it is a Shabbat to Yahuah in all your dwellings. That includes your businesses. Anything that's under your authority, no work should be done. So basically, no work in your house, no work at your business location, no work on the internet, nothing. That's what this is meaning to me. Okay, so work's out. All right. So now, that's it. He doesn't say anything else about it, about the weekly Shabbat. So basically, no work. You do no work. It's a Kadesh Mikra, means there's activities going on. You're supposed to eat. You should eat on the Shabbat. You should celebrate. It should be a day of delight, a day of spending time with your husband, with Yahuah, with your Maker, worshiping, praising Him, studying about Him, assembling, worship and praising Him together, and just getting joy and happiness and laughter according to your relationship with Yahuah. Okay, and Kadesh Mikra for the Shabbat, most people don't think of it as that way. They think you're supposed to go and hide in your house, cover yourself up in your blankets and lay in bed all day long. You know, I've even heard some people say, "Oh, I fast on Shabbat." You know, you're not supposed to. You're supposed to eat. You're supposed to celebrate. You're supposed to have laughter and joy and thanksgiving to Yahuah and learn about him, spend time with him, read his scriptures. Spend time with your brothers and your sisters. Show them love. Okay. Be a Shabbat of rest. But then it says, Kama a Kadesh Mikra, you do no work. So that defines what that rest is, not working. So in other words, man, don't have your mind on anything else but Yahuah and your brotherhood. Basically, that's it. Look, we're going to get into it. But in the Nazarene writings, I can show you dozens of times, that Yahuah, Yahusha, his Talmudim, the apostles, his followers, and other people like the religious leaders, all out on Shabbat. Yahusha even walking through the wheat fields with his Talmudim as they picked heads of grain and ate them would be like foraging for food. That's sort of like work in most people's mind, isn't it? So we need to apply some common sense as we go through these. You know, we like to stay stringent and closed-minded, but we can't be like that. We have to apply common sense and think about these things. It's time the Nazarene, wakes up, comes out of the religious mindset that we were raised in. Ugh. So here we go in number 4. These are the appointed times of Yahuah, set apart Mikra, which you are to proclaim at their appointed times. All right, so we find out here that the first one is the weekly Shabbat. And there we go with some more now. In the first month, on the 14th Yom of the month, between the evenings, is the Passover to Yahuah. That's it. That's all he says about that. And then he says in 6, it says, and on the 15th Yom of this month is the festival of unleavened bread to Yahuah. 7 Yomim you eat unleavened bread. On the first Yom you have a Kadesh Mikra. Okay? It's a celebration. It's an assembly. It's a proclamation. It's a rehearsal. You do no servile work. You do no servile work. Okay? So we've already talked about servile work here now. And you shall bring it, and look, there's some action, there's activity going on for it to be Kadesh Mikra, okay, to begin with. All right, so if it's a Kadesh Mikra, then we know there's activity, there's movement, there's things happening. It's not everybody sitting still in place, shaking like a leaf, scared to do anything. There's some joy, shouting going on, proclamation, praising and worshiping Yahuah, man. You do no servile work, and you shall bring an offering made by fire to Yahuah for 7 days? That sounds like some activity to me. That sounds like movement. And actually, they're almost sounds like they're working. So is there a difference between working and bringing these to you? Yeah, they're not getting paid to do that. They're not getting paid. There's a big difference. And you shall bring an offering made by fire to you for 7 days. Are they paying them to do that? No. They're not working because they're not getting paid. This stuff about not tearing toilet paper, not turning off electric lights, not opening up your refrigerator is hogwash. It's silliness. It's tradition. You shall bring offering made by fire. There's fire going on to Yahuah for 7 days. 7 days straight, man. On the 7th Yom, it's a Kadesh Mikra. It's a celebration, man. It's a proclamation. It's an assembly. You do no servile work. So here we're saying there's no servile work. So you're not to serve anybody. In other words, everyone gets to rest. Now, does this mean this is on the week of unleavened bread, which is, we all should know that this is the first pilgrimage festival, okay, of the year. So it is a festival. It is. It's a feast. So there's eating, cooking, and celebrating going on. It's a Kadesh Mikra. Okay, so can we say then here that within these 7 days of unleavened bread that we should do no work? No work at all? It doesn't say that. So it just says no servile work on the first day and no servile work on the last day. Okay, so all the days in between those 5 days, you're definitely allowed to go to work because it doesn't say you're not. Okay, so what do we do with this? Do we automatically say that we're not to do no work at all? Does no servile work cover no work? I'm going to let you decide that. You make your own decision on that between you and Yahuah. But let me just say this. If the first day of unleavened bread or the last day of unleavened bread would happen to fall on Shabbat, then that would include no work, do no work, and do no servile work. Because you still have to apply the appointed time to the weekly Sabbath. So in other words, if an appointed time such as right now falls on the Sabbath, okay, the Sabbath was given to us first. The Sabbath is mentioned first in the appointed times. Here in Leviticus 23, we just read it, the very first thing we read. Okay, so if an appointed time falls on a weekly Shabbat, okay, then what do? Does that annul the appointed time because we've got the weekly Sabbath first? No. If it did, then we just throw the first day of Tabernacles out and say, oh, we can't celebrate it because it fell on the weekly Sabbath. Can't do that. It doesn't annul it. So what happens? It blends with it. So you still have to do what was commanded to do on the first day of Tabernacles, which we're going to get into. Okay. But you also have to remember the Sabbath, the weekly Sabbath. Okay. And so what does the weekly Sabbath tell us to do? Do no work. Do no work. Okay. So if you do no work, that means no buying and selling. Because if you're buying or selling, somebody's working. Okay. Even though maybe you're not, but the person you're buying from, you're causing them to work. And if you're selling them something, then you're the one working. See that? So you can't do it. So buying and selling goes along with do no work. That's a no-brainer. Okay. So if it falls on a weekly Sabbath like it is right now, then it blends. So what do we do here? Okay. No servile work and no work. Because we can't ignore the weekly Sabbath, and we can't annul the appointed time, the high Sabbath, but we blend them together. That way we're obeying both. Okay. So I'm not going to go any farther than that. You all take it from there and you sort it out, figure it out on your own. Okay. Because I know what a lot of you're thinking, and I'm just not going there right now. Okay, so here we go. That's it, okay, for the week of unleavened bread. So then he goes down here, and then now we start into 9. And Yahuah spoke to Moses or Musa, saying, Speak to the children of Yisrael, and you shall say to them, when you come into the land which I gave you, and shall reap its harvest, then you shall bring a sheaf of the first fruits of your harvest to the priest, which is barley sheaf. Okay. And he shall wave the sheaf before Yahuah for your acceptance. On the morrow after the Shabbat, the priest waves it, which will be the first day of the week. And on that yom, when you wave the sheaf, you shall prepare a male lamb, a year old, a perfect one, as a burnt offering to Yahuah, and its grain offering, 2/10 of an ephah of fine flour mixed with oil, an offering made by fire to Yahuah, a sweet fragrance, and its drink offering, 1/4 of a hin of wine. And you do not eat bread or roasted grain or fresh grain until the same yom that you have brought an offering to your Elohim. A law forever throughout your generations in all your dwellings. So here we go. This is first fruits, the barley harvest. This always happens on the first day of the week. Bikurim, and we know it as Bikurim. Okay, so there that is. It's not a Sabbath or anything like that. It's just they have to wave the sheaf in front to Yahuah. Representing, of course, Yahusha's resurrection. All right, now here we go. And from the morrow after the Shabbat, from the yom that you brought the sheaf of the wave offering, you shall count for yourselves 7 complete Sabbaths or weekly Sabbaths, Shabbats. Until the morrow after the 7th Shabbat, you count 50 yamim. So 7 times 7 would be 49. 7 weeks, 7-day weeks is 49 days. And then the morrow after that would be 50th. And that's what Pentecost means. Okay, count 50. So here we got the counting of the weeks, festival of weeks, if you will. You count 50 yamim, then you shall bring a new grain offering to Yahuah, which would be a wheat offering. Okay. So this would obviously be Shabuath or Pentecost. Bring from your dwellings for a wave offering 2 loaves of bread of 2/10 of an ephah of fine flour. They are baked with leaven, first fruits to Yahuah. And besides the bread, you shall bring 7 lambs, a year old, perfect ones, and 1 young bull and 2 rams. So this isn't the Sabbath either, okay, but it is an appointed time, which is counted as a Sabbath. And so since it's an appointed time, do we say that these are all Sabbaths? Are they all Sabbaths? Traditionally, yes, they are. Although it's not saying it is. It's saying it's the day after the Sabbath. He's saying these are appointed times. The back to 4, these are the appointed times of Yahuah, set apart Mikra, which you are to proclaim at their appointed times. It's not saying it's a Sabbath. It's just saying it's an appointed time. See that? But I know we're all accustomed to saying that all 7 are Sabbaths. But are they? You decide. There are burnt offering to Yahuah with their grain offering and their drink offerings, an offering made by fire for a sweet fragrance to Yahuah. A lot of fire going on, a lot of burning, a lot of things happening here, a lot of action, because it's a Kadesh Mikra. There's activity. And you shall offer 1 male goat as a sin offering and 2 male lambs a year old as a peace offering. And the priest shall wave them besides the bread of the first fruits as a wave offering before Yahuah, besides the 2 lambs, and they are set apart to Yahuah for the priest. And on this same Yom you shall proclaim a Kadesh Mekra, see that, for you. You do no servile work on it. So you do no servile work on it. A law forever in all your dwellings throughout your generations. And when you reap the harvest of your land, do not completely reap the corners of your field when you reap, and do not gather any gleaning from your harvest. Leave them for the poor and for the stranger. I am Yahuah, your Elohim. Shabuath, man, the 50th day at the wheat harvest. Okay, 50th day after first fruits, celebrating the wheat harvest. No servile work on it. Okay. Extremely interesting, right? Okay, so here we go now, and we're going to get into trumpets here, which is interesting. It's not a whole lot about it. It says, and Yahuah spoke to Moses, saying, speak to the children of Yisrael, saying, in the 7th month, on the first Yom of the month, you have a rest, a remembrance, you have a rest. So that tells me right there that has to be a Sabbath. You have a rest. A remembrance of blowing of trumpets, a set apart mikra. You do no servile work. And you shall bring an offering made by fire to Yahuah. That's it, man. This is the only appointed time that takes place during the new moon, when it's totally dark outside. It's a black disk hanging in the sky. It's the only one. Okay, so this would be known also as the day that no man knows the hour, because no one really knew when it started. It had to be signaled. The beginning of trumpets had to be signaled by the high priest once that the lookers came in and told him that it was the new moon. After they would interrogate them and separate them, and once they determined that it was the new moon, then the priest would proclaim it, and then they would set all the fire beacons off, start the fires up on the top of the hills so that everyone could see that trumpets had begun, everyone out into the fields and stuff that was outside of Jerusalem. So they would blow the trumpets, and then they would fire up the beacons, the wood piles up on the hills surrounding Jerusalem, so everybody would know that the day of trumpets had begun. Okay, so Day of Atonement, the fast, Yom Kafar. And Yahuah spoke to Moses, saying, on the 10th Yom of this 7th month is the Yom of Atonement. It shall be a Kadesh Mikram for you. That means there's activity, proclamation, assembly, convocation, reading, praying, proclaiming. And you shall afflict your beings, and shall bring an offering made by fire to Yahuah. There's activity. And you do no work on that same Yom, for it is the Yom of Atonement, to make atonement for you before Yahuah your Elohim. So here we go now, no work at all. So no making money, no buying and selling, okay, at all. So it's referred to as the fast. For any being who is not afflicted on that same day, he shall be cut off from his people. And any being who does any work on that same day, that being I shall destroy from the midst of his people. You do no work, a law forever throughout your generations and all your dwellings. he's driving the point home here on this Shabbat. Obviously, it's a Shabbat. Matter of fact, it's known traditionally as the Shabbat of all Shabbats. And he's making the point clear. You're not to do any work at all on this particular point of time. It is a Shabbat of rest to you. Bam. That's clear now. He made it very clear. And you shall afflict your beans. On the 9th yom of the month at evening, from evening to evening, you observe your Shabbat. So here's Yom Kippur. Now, if you understand this, you will see that if you're counting the days from daylight to daylight, instead of evening to evening, once you go daylight to daylight to daylight, and you keep counting, and all of a sudden you come to Yom Kippur, and now you gotta adjust, start counting your days from evening to evening. You just messed up your entire weekly rotation going day to day. So it can't be. It's not mathematically correct. It's impossible. You just shifted it all. You just messed it all up. You can't go back to counting day to day again, because that right there just messed up your math. So you're done. Your rhythm's done, man. You can't continue on counting that way now. So those who say, well, we only need the days only from evening to evening on Yom Kippur, but all the other days of the year we go day to day, is incorrect. Can't be. You cannot do that. That messes up your math. That's a child can see that. That's elementary. But for sure, the Day of Atonement is a Shabbat, and no work, strictly enforced. Do not do any work. It's strictly enforced on that day. That's why they call it the Shabbat of Shabbats. Very powerful stuff, man. So keep in mind here, a lot of people get kafar mixed up with Passover. Yeah, it's a Day of Atonement, but it's the scapegoat. It's not the Passover lamb. Okay, that's atonement as well. But this is the scapegoat. This is when sin is judged. This is when sin is judged and annihilated, destroyed, done away with, put away from you. You can't be contaminated or touched by sin anymore, spiritually. Day of Atonement, the scapegoat, not the Passover lamb, but the scapegoat, okay, which Yahushua was. All right, so then now we're into booths. So here we go into booths now. So listen up closely. And Yahuah spoke to Moses, saying, speak to the children of Yisrael, saying, on the 15th yom of the 7th month is the festival of Succoth for 7 yamim to Yahuah. Okay, for 7 days. On the first yom is a set apart mikra. There's that mikra, there's activity. Okay, so it has to be activity associated with this. You do no servile work. No servile work, man. What that means is you can't work and not, just because you're not getting paid, you still can't work. You can't serve nobody. Okay, you have to only serve yourself. You can't serve anyone else. And you can't require it of anyone to serve you, because you'll make them violate this command to do no servile work. So that sin is going to fall on your head. So if your mother or anybody on this day, your wife, daughter, anybody would say, yeah, let me get your plate for you, Joe. Yeah, I'd be jumping up. I'd say, oh, don't bother. I'll go ahead and get it myself. I don't mind. I wouldn't be sitting there and say, yeah, bring it to me. Give me double portions of potato. Give me a big glass of milk while you're at it. Cut me a couple pieces of that bread. Now you're making them violate the command, so that goes on your head. So no servile work means you can't do any type of work at all. Not even buying or selling is no work, but no servile work is no doing no work. You can't even get, even if you're not getting paid for it, you still can't do it. Okay, I hope I'm explaining that right. For 7 days you bring an offering made by fire to Yahuah. For 7 days? Sounds like work to me. Okay, so that's it. That's it, man. For the first day. All it says, on the first day is a set apart mikra, and you do no servile work. For 7 days you bring an offering made by fire to you. That's it. Then it says on the 8th day, now this is the 8th day, there shall be a set apart mikra for you. So this is a proclamation and assembly. There's action here for you, and you shall bring an offering made by fire to Yahuah. So there's a action, there's rehearsal, there's convocation, there's proclamation, there's assembly, there's proclaiming, going on here, an assembling. It is a closing festival. You do no servile work. These are the appointed times, and that would, the 8th day would be the last great day. Okay, it's the closing day, the day of closing. These are the appointed times of Yahuah, which you proclaim as set apart gatherings. See that? You proclaim them as a set apart gatherings. Kadesh Mikra, the assembly. This is a festival. These are the appointed times of Yahuah, which you proclaim as set apart gatherings, to bring an offering made by fire to Yahuah, a burnt offering and a grain offering. If this fell on the weekly Sabbath, did they obey these rules? You better believe they did. You better believe they did. All they did was do no work or no servile work. They just blended them together. That's why they call it the high one, because you still have to do it, even if it falls on that weekly Sabbath. Although the weekly Sabbath was given first, we don't get rid of the weekly Sabbath, but we blend it. We still have to obey the appointed times and do what he said to do on them. Just because it falls on that weekly Sabbath don't mean you get rid of it. Oh, we don't have to do the first day of Tabernacles this year. It fell on a Sabbath, so it's avoided. We can nullify it. No, it doesn't work that way. You don't get to do that. You still have to obey Yahuah's commands. You just blend them is what you do. An offering made by fire to Yahuah, a burnt offering and a grain offering, a slaughtering and a drink offering as commanded for every day. Besides the Shabbats of Yahuah, and besides your gifts, and besides all your vows, and besides all your voluntary offerings, which you give to Yahuah. Wow, that's a lot of stuff going on in that day. It says beside your Shabbats. That means you blend it together. You want to read again? These are the appointed times of Yahuah, which you proclaim as set apart gatherings, to bring an offering made by fire to Yahuah, a burnt offering and a grain offering, a slaughtering, a drink offering, as commanded for every day, besides the Shabbats of Yahuah, and besides your gifts, and besides all your vows, and besides all your voluntary offerings which you give to Yahuah. You do all these things as well, but they're attached to the festival. And if it falls on a weekly Sabbath, it would be attached to that weekly Shabbat and the high one. And all these things extra. This is a lot of activity, folks. This is a set apart Mikra, Kadesh Mikra. A lot of things happening here, and obviously permissible, because it says, and besides all your vows And besides all your voluntary offerings, which you give to you, permissible. They're permissible to be done, even if it falls on a weekly Shabbat. Doesn't annul the high one. It just doesn't. Okay, so now let's look at a little bit. Actually, I think Tabernacles is really the longest definition we have here, really. Let's just keep looking here. And on the 15th day of the 7th moon, when you gather in the fruit of the land, observe the festival of Yahuah for 7 days. On the first day is a rest, and on the 8th Yom, a rest, meaning Sabbath, rest day, right? That's what Sabbath means, is rest. Yom, Shabbat, day of rest, okay? And you shall take for you on the first Yom the fruit of good trees. Now, this is where I want to spend a little bit of time, because I think a lot of people, most of us, don't pass by this and don't even know what it's talking about, and have done little research to find out. And I think this, to me, is kind of a big part of Tabernacles. And it's not tradition. We can't rightly say that the lulav is tradition, because I've heard people say that, but we cannot rightfully say that because it's instructed, given to us in scriptures here, in Leviticus 23. So it's not tradition. It's part of the celebration, the Kadesh Mikra, that we're supposed to be doing. It's part of the activities. Doesn't matter if it falls on a weekly Sabbath. It's still part of the activity of this festival. So this becomes extremely important because it's given to us, it's written down to do. I know a lot of people are saying, well, we can't bring all these burnt offerings and drink offerings and all this other stuff because there's no temple there and all this and blah, blah, blah. And yes, you're correct, but there's an alternative that trumps it, especially for those in the everlasting covenant. We're going to get into that in a little bit. So just hang on to that thought. I know a lot of you are thinking that. But right now, I want to concentrate on this because I think it's huge, and I think it's ignored by most people and misunderstood as well. So here we go now. On the first day is a rest, and the 8th day is a rest. And you shall take for you on the first day the fruit of good trees, branches of palm trees, twigs of leafy trees, and willows of the stream. And shall rejoice before Yahuah your Elohim for 7 days. That means you have to do whatever this is telling us to do. We have to do it for 7 days. Not just 1 day, 7. And you shall observe it as a festival to Yahuah. As a festival to Yahuah for 7 days in the year. See, it's a festival. That's action, man. There's activity when you're doing a festival. A law forever in your generations. It's forever. As long as flesh and blood exists. Observe it in the 7th month. Dwell in booths for 7 days. All who are native Israelites dwell in booths. So you have to be a native Israelite to fall under this command. So that your generations know that I made the children of Yisrael dwell in booths when I brought them out of the land of Mitzrayim. I am Yahuah your Elohim. Thus did Moshe speak of the Modim, or the appointed times, of Yahuah to the children of Yisrael. Okay, so that pretty much wraps it up. So what we want to do now is I want to go back to this fruit of good trees, branches of palm trees, twigs of leafy trees, and willows of the stream, and rejoice before Yahuah your Elohim for 7 days. It's a festival. This is a festival for 7 days of the year. So what's happening here? So we're given 4 species, okay, that has a spiritual representation to it. It represents these 4 species of plant, if you will, which are you could say are representative of 4 types of people or 4 types of Yehudim. Okay. Also, we see parallel passage of this in Luke 8 and Matthew 13 when Yahushua gives us the parable of the sower, the soil, the 4 types of soil. So these 4 species of plants are representing the 4 types of soil or 4 types of people. Aren't men soil? Yeah, we're made from soil. And so there are those 4 then are a lula or a date palm, an etrog or a citrus fruit, looks like a huge lemon, if you will. And then there's the hadass, which is a myrtle branch, and then you have the arava, which is a willow, branches from willow tree. Okay, so these 4 bind together, and then a blessing spoken, and then they're waved to Yahuah. So you can shake them or wave them to Yahuah. Okay, same thing. And so what's going on here? Well, this is the 4 type of people of the Yehudim, right? And these 4 type of people here worship Yahusha differently. But they're bound together and waved and offered to Yahuah together, okay, as unity. Not separately, but unity. Okay, and so this creates an amazing effect as far as Yahuah accepting people, because it's a bundle. It's a unity. Like, here we are. Take one, take us all, or none. It's an amazing, amazing thing that they're doing here. So what is this 4 types? Really, how does this comply? Well, it complies as in the different ways that people conduct themselves, okay, in life. And what I mean by that is the citrus fruit, the etrog, it looks like a huge lemon. I'm going to try to show you a video of this. Is equal to a person who studies Torah and obeys Yahuwah's commandments. So he's a student of Torah and he's obedient to his commandments. So this is a good person, a good fruit, right? It's a fruit to Yahuwah. See how it fits? So the fruit to Yahuwah, a good smelling fragrance, a good fruit, a citrus, represents a person who not only studies Torah as a student of Torah, a Talmudim, if you will, of Yahusha, but also obeys the mitzvah or the commandments. All right. The lulav or the palm tree, the palm stem, which represents the backbone of the person. The palm trees is a person who studies Torah, is a student of Torah, but does not obey the commandments of Yahuwah. And then the myrtles or the hadassim, the myrtle branches, represents a person who does not study Torah, but obeys Yahuwah's commandments. So he's not a student of Torah, if you will, but he is obedient to Yahuwah's commandments. The willows, the aravat, or the willow branches, if you will, is a person who does not study Torah and who does not observe or obey the commandments. So it's the opposite of the etrog. So all these 4 types of people bound together and wave to Yahuah as one. Take us all or none. It's powerful stuff, man. Think as when Moshe declined Yahuah's offer to start over with him and make a nation out of Moshe. He said, no. He said, instead, let them live, make a nation out of them, and kill me. Wow. Feeling the love, man? It's powerful stuff. That's why I'm surprised that most people don't know that they're supposed to do this. Now, this waving of this, they call it the luvah because the palm is the backbone. It's the structure of this wave that they're waving in front of Yahuah. They do it usually in the morning for 7 days. They don't do it on the 8th day. So you don't wave this, what they call it the lulav, on lulav or whatever, on the 8th day, and you don't stay in your tents on the 8th day. The 8th day is different. It's not part of the 7 days of the booths, the week of tabernacles. It's a festival, ending festival at the end of it. So it's its own festival, really, and it's a Sabbath. The 8th day is a Sabbath. There's only 3 pilgrimage festivals. Well, that they do the festival on the first day of booths. Okay, so you don't say, well, the 8th day is a festival. No, it's a closing festival for all the festivals. It's like counted separately. It's not really part of the 7 appointed times. See what I'm saying? But it is a Sabbath, and it's very important because it represents the 8th millennium, or when you get your immortal body that you've been waiting for. Okay, so it's a celebration of immortality. It's separate from the celebrations of flesh and blood, which the first 7 appointed times are. Even the weekly is. So we'd say the first 8. Okay, so anyway, with that said, I hope everybody's kind of getting what I'm saying here. This part here, up here, before I'm going to try to show you this video, but before we do that, back up here at 42 where it says, dwell in booths for 7 days, all who are native born, native Israelites dwell in booths. Okay, a lot of people try to get out of celebrating tabernacles, saying, well, you don't have to do it unless you're native born or you're a native Israelite, right? So let's get a look and see, in fact, if that holds true. By looking at, let's go to Ezekiel 47, if we can. Ezekiel 47. Where's Ezekiel 47 at? So Ezekiel 47, 22. Ezekiel 47, 22 says, and we'll read down through the end of that. I'll start at 21. And you shall divide this land among yourselves according to the tribes of Yisrael. And it shall be that you divide it by lot as an inheritance for yourselves and for the strangers who sojourned in your midst and who bear children among you. And they shall be to you as native born among the children of Yisrael. With you they have an inheritance in the midst of the tribes of Yisrael. And it shall be that in whatever tribe the stranger sojourns, there you give him his inheritance, declares the master. So there you go. So if you become an Israelite, okay, and you have fruit, you bear children among you. Children are fruit, okay? And so if you bear fruit by bringing others into the everlasting covenant, man, see, I mean, you're a native Israelite, according to this we just read. So you can't get out of it. If you're, in other words, if you're in the everlasting covenant, you have an inheritance in the land of Israel. You have a lot, man. And the sojourner, which you may be, if you bear fruit, and bring others into Israel by bearing fruit, who bear children among you. You know, fruit's children to the Hebrew mindset, man, and to Yahuah as well. Then guess what? You're a native Israelite. And whatever tribe that you sojourn with, okay, there you give him his inheritance. So you'll have an inherit part. Your portion will be with that tribe. You'll inherit the land of that tribe. It's assigned to that tribe. So there you go. So and also, you can read Romans 11 too, where it talks about the natural branch and the wild olive tree, right? Engrafting. And so once you've engrafted into the natural olive tree, if you be a wild olive branch, you've engrafted in, guess what you are? You're now a native Israelite. As long as you're engrafted into that tree. You see that? So you can't get out of it, man. Build that booth, set up that tent, and celebrate. Celebrate. Proclaim. Assemble. Praise and worship Yahuah. Be joyful. Be happy. Give thanks that you're a native Israelite now. And you're chosen as a treasured possession to do these things. Wow. What an honor that is. You get to do these things because you're a treasured possession. Look at it that way. Don't look at them like, man, I got to do this stuff. No, don't look at it like that. Look at, I get to do these things because I am a treasured possession of Yahuah. I'm a priest. I'm a born into Israel, a set-apart nation, set-apart people to Yahuah. And I've been chosen to be his priest to the other people and set apart to Yahuah as a treasured possession. Think like that. Okay, so here in Leviticus 24, real quickly, we see some remarkable things here. It says up here in verse 2, to make the lamps burn continually. Outside the veil of the witness in the tent of meeting, Aaron is to arrange it from evening until morning before Yahuah continually, a law forever throughout your generations. He is to arrange the lamps on the clean gold lampstand before Yahuah continually. And you shall take fine flour and bake 12 cakes with it, 2/10 of an ephah in each cake, and you shall set them in 2 rows, 6 in a row, on the clean table before Yahuah, and shall put clear frankincense on each row, and it shall be on the bread as a remembrance portion, an offering made by fire to Yahuah. On every Sabbath, every Shabbat, he is to arrange it before Yahuah continually from the children of Yisrael, an everlasting covenant. And it shall be for Aaron and his sons, and they shall eat it in the set apart place, because it is most set apart to him from the offerings of Yahuah made by fire and everlasting law. On every Shabbat. Okay, so there we go. Think of that continually going on, continually, and on every Shabbat. See, so there's activity, man. There's activity. Remember, we read it right off the get-go, Leviticus 23, that the weekly Shabbat is a Kadesh Mikra. There's activity. There's celebration. There's proclamation. There's assembling going on the weekly Sabbath. Okay, so let's take that on over here to Deuteronomy 16, man. Go to Deuteronomy 16. So Deuteronomy 16 speaks of the 3 pilgrimage feasts of the year, every year. And these are festivals. These are festivals. Okay, no matter how you look at it, they are festivals. And if it's a festival, that means there's a feast to eat. Okay. And there's a lot of people. There's a huge assembly and proclamation going on here. All right. So, yeah. Let's get a look at it. Deuteronomy 16, guard the month of Abib and perform the Passover to Yahuah your Elohim. For in the month of Abib, Yahuah your Elohim brought you out of Mitzrayim by night. And you shall slaughter the Passover to Yahuah your Elohim from the flock and the herd in the place where Yahuah chooses to put his name. So there you go. There's the Passover. So what this is the week of unleavened bread. So here we're starting out with the Passover. Eat no unleavened bread. Eat no leavened bread with it. For 7 days you eat unleavened bread with it. Bread of affliction. That's interesting. Eat no leavened bread with it. Even the Passover meal. Okay. For 7 days you eat unleavened bread with it. Bread of affliction. Because you came out of the land of Mitzrayim in haste, so that you remember the Yom in which you came out of the land of Mitzrayim, all the Yamim of your life. And no leaven should be seen with you in all your border for 7 days. Neither should any of the meat which you slaughter in the evening on the first Yom stay all night until morning. You are not allowed to slaughter the Passover within any of your gates, which Yahuah your Elohim gives you. But at the place where Yahuah your Elohim chooses to make his name dwell, there you slaughter the Passover in the evening. At the going down of the sun, at the appointed time you came out of Mitzrayim. And you shall roast and eat it in the place which Yahuah your Elohim chooses. And in the morning you shall turn and go to your tents. 6 days you eat unleavened bread, and on the 7th day there is a closing festival to Yahuah your Elohim. You do no work. There you go. You do no work. No buying and selling. Count 7 weeks for yourself. Begin to count 7 weeks from the time you begin to put the sickle to the grain. So there you go, man. There's the first one. So it encompasses the week of unleavened bread. Okay. That's a festival. And then, so now the next one is Pentecost or Shabboth. Okay. And it says, and you shall perform the festival of weeks to Yahuah your Elohim, which is another, it includes the countdown. According to the voluntary offering from your hand, which you give as Yahuah your Elohim blesses you. And you shall rejoice before Yahuah your Elohim, you and your son and your daughter and your male servant, your female servant, and the Levite who is within your gates, and the stranger and the fatherless and the widow who are in your midst, at the place where Yahuah your Elohim chooses to make his name dwell. That's Jerusalem. And you shall remember that you were a slave in Mitzrayim, and you shall guard and do these laws, perform. Okay, so that's it. So that's the festival of Shabboth. And we don't see a whole lot more there than what was in Leviticus 23, really, in any of these. So then the third festival of the year is Tabernacles, the Feast of Tabernacles, or Booths, Sukkoth. And it starts here in 13. It says, perform the festival of Booths for 7 days. So it's a week of Tabernacles. After then gathering from your threshing floor and from your winepress, and you shall rejoice in your festival. See that? You shall rejoice in your festival. There's lots of activity, man. I would compare this to like a carnival or something. You know what I mean? There's a lot of going on here, man. Okay, you and your son and your daughter and your male servant and your female servant and the Levite and the stranger and the fathers and the widow who are within your gates. For 7 days you shall observe a festival to Yahuah, your Elohim, in the place which Yahuah chooses, because Yahuah, your Elohim, does bless you in all your increase and in all your work of your hands, and you shall be only rejoicing. So you should be only rejoicing from how he's blessing you, man. 3 times a year, all your males appear before Yahuah, your Elohim, in the place which he chooses, at the festival of unleavened bread, at the festival of weeks, and the festival of booths. There's only 3 festivals. And none should appear before Yahuah empty-handed, but each one with the gift of his hand, according to the blessing of Yahuah, your Elohim, which he has given you. Appoint judges and officers within all your gates, which Yahuah, your Elohim, has given you, according to your tribes. And they shall judge the people with righteous ruling. Do not distort right ruling. Do not show partiality, nor take a bribe, for a bribe blinds the eyes of the wise and twists the words of the righteous. Follow righteousness, righteousness alone, so that you live and inherit the land which Yahuah, your Elohim, is giving you. Do not plant for yourself any tree as an Asherah near the altar of Yahuah, your Elohim, that you make for yourself. And do not set up a pillar, which Yahuah, your Elohim, hates. So there you go, man. That shows that those are festivals, and there is rejoicing and celebration and proclaiming, assembling going on. Okay. All right. So now let's take that over. Let's go to Numbers 28 and 29. So Numbers 28 and 29. This is very, very interesting. So listen up real closely to this Numbers 28 and 29 and reread it yourself. Okay. At the end, we're going to get into whether or not Tabernacles actually appears in the Netzarim writings, and we'll show some things there. But as far as the 144 and stuff, Melissa, probably going to save that for our study in Revelations. I may touch it if I have time, but we're definitely going to be covering that in our study of Revelations on Zoom at noon, for sure. Okay, so like I said earlier, Revelations and the Feast of Tabernacles go hand in hand. Very, very close proximity. Let's put it that way. All right, so Numbers 28. And Yahuah spoke to Moses, saying, command the children of Yisrael, and you shall say to them, take heed to bring my offering, my food for my offerings made by fire, as a sweet fragrance to me. Oh, you know what I did? I forgot to try to show you this video. Let's just put that on hold just for a second. Let me see if I can do it. It's really kind of important for those who don't know anything about this. Let's see. It's yeah, this is it right here. So looks like we're going to be able to watch it. Now, don't pay much attention to anything else. Just try to get the understanding of what's going on here. Okay. So here it is. It's only about 4 minutes long, so it's short. So we got to pay attention.
Hi everyone, Rabbi Posen here to show you how to put your lulav together this year. So you'll get all the pieces that you need, and they'll be in a plastic bag. So first step you need to do is take them out of your plastic bag. I've already done that. You're going to end up with the 3 pieces you need, the 3 species that make the lulav, plus the box with your etrog, and then this, which is how we put together the actual lulav, the holder. So I'm going to start with how to put it together. We have our lulav will be the first thing you need. That's the palm. This is our big palm frond, and you want to do it when you put it in the holder so that the spine, which is, you can find a spine, it's a spot that's not moving, that's going to be facing you when you're holding it. So you take it and you put it through the holder. It can be a little bit tricky. So the holder hasn't been spread open yet, so bear with me a moment. This is probably the trickiest part of putting together your lulav, actually, is getting everything into the holder, not in the right order, but just getting it into the holder. Okay. Okay, so that's the trickiest part, is getting the lulav through the holder. Once you've done that, you're ready to go. So first our lulav, and just a reminder that it's symbolically, it stands straight up just like our spine. So this is the backbone of the work that we're going to do. The next thing you'll do is you'll put in your willow and your myrtle, and they go in the order of willow on the left-hand side, and the myrtle will go on the right-hand side. So I have my willow, my arava, and the arava has no taste and no smell. It's sort of like somebody who doesn't really do much work in the world, but we have it here because it also represents our mouth and the words that we can say in the world. There are 2 willows, 2 arava that go in, and then we have our 3 hadas, our 3 myrtle that go in, and those go in on the right side. Sometimes I wrap mine with a little bit of wet paper towel and then some aluminum foil when I'm putting them in, just so that they stay nice and moist while they're in here for the holiday. So you just put them in like that, and now you have them all ready to go. Backbone for the lulav. On the left of it with the spine facing you is the willow, the arava, that's our mouth. And on the right of it is our hadas, our myrtle. Those are our eyes to remind us of the work we can see in our world and the work we can do. So once you've got those together, your lulav is ready to go. And then you need your etrog, which just comes in the box. It's got its pitom, its tip at the top. The etrog is our heart. It's meant to represent our souls, our heart, the core of the work that we do. So when you're holding your lulav and etrog to make your blessing, your lulav goes in your right hand, your etrog goes in your left hand. And actually, when we say the blessing, the pitom faces down, because that's how it grows on the tree when we're saying the blessing. And then after we've said the blessing, we flip it so the pitom is up and we're ready to start our shaking. And that's how you put your lulav together. It's pretty easy, pretty simple. Make sure you're doing it with your willow on the left, the spine of the lulav facing you, and then you've got your myrtle on the right, and you're ready to go. Lulav, etrog in hand. Have a wonderful Sukkot Chag Sameach.
Okay, so that was how you put it together, your lulav together. And now I'm going to show you a little clip here. It's a short one as well. After you get it together, how do you use it? What do you do with it? You use this thing inside of your tent, your booth, your temporary booth, usually in the morning after daylight comes, daybreak. And you do it all 7 days of the week of Tabernacles. So let's look and see what they do with this thing, how to wave it. If I can find it. There's one here that I saw with this young lady. Okay, now this lady here, I believe, has never done it before, and so she would be one to watch. And this guy up here, of course, he's real familiar with it. But let's see what he does. He seems to be the one the more familiar. Well, maybe we're not going to see him. Let's go back. I don't know. Maybe it's too old to watch. See if we can get this girl. I'm pretty sure I watched this one before. Yeah, we're going to see her. Here she is.
So now I want you to flip it over. Exactly. Now I want you to hold them two together. So if you hold the lulav and ashra together, just like that, and shake 3 times forward, to the right, to the back, to the left, up, and down. Beautiful.
Okay, so there it is. So she was a beginner, first time she ever did that. And so you could see, she was a little bit confused. But what happened there is she recited the blessing, which you can find online. It's pretty easy to find it. And then after you say the blessing in your tent, then you do the shaking or the waving of the lulav. Okay, and you can find things on the internet. Pretty simple to find this. What it means to do the wavering and those different. You notice straight ahead, to the left, to the right, up and down, what that actually means and all that. So do your own research. I just wanted to show you what that was all about, and that's a very important part of tabernacles that I think most people forget about or maybe don't even know about. Okay, so let's get back into scripture now and go back into Numbers 28 when we began there just shortly ago. So I'll start over on that. It says, and Yahuah spoke to Moses, saying, command the children of Israel, and you shall say to them, take heed to bring my offering, my food for my offering made by fire is a sweet fragrance to me at their appointed time. And you shall say to them, this is the offering made by fire which you bring to Yahuah, 2 male lambs a year old, perfect ones, daily, a continual burnt offering. All right, so now every single day, he wants them to do these continued burnt offerings every single day, including Shabbat. Shabbat's not exempt, man. He wants this continued burnt offering going on all 7 days of the week, continual offering. It's what's continual. As we get into Revelations, we're going to have to get into Daniel, and that continual offering will come up, and you'll see that. And so this is what this is talking about. The one lamb you prepare in the morning, and the other lamb you prepare between the evenings, with 1/10 of an ephah of fine flour as a grain offering mixed with 1/4 of a hin of pressed oil. A continual burnt offering which was offered at Mount Sinai for a sweet fragrance, an offering made by fire to Yahuah, and its drink offering 1/4 of a hin for each lamb. Pour out the drink to Yahuah as an offering to the set apart place. So you don't drink it, you pour it out to Yahuah. And is this something we can continue today in our life? Yes, but not literal, spiritual. That's what we have to understand. As we're our members of the body, we're in the everlasting covenant. We have to realize that these things are continual and forever. So what could we possibly do in the spiritual realm to have this continual offering, burnt offering happening in our life as born again believers, spiritual sons of Yahuah? Well, what could it be? What are we commanded to do? Continue. What did Paul say that we should do continual? Prayer, right? Pray to Yahuah continually. That's your continual offering. Okay, that's spiritual now. And the other lamb you prepare between the evenings. As the morning grain offering and its drink offering, you prepare it as an offering made by fire, a sweet fragrance to Yahuah. And on the Yom Shabbat, so here it is right now. See, this is what they do every day, daily, every single day. Now in 9, it gets to Yom Shabbat, the 7th day. And on the Yom Shabbat, 2 lambs, a year old, perfect ones, and 2/10 of an ephah of fine flour as a grain offering, mixed with oil, with its drink offering, the burnt offering for every Shabbat, besides the continual burning offering with its drink offering. So there you go. Okay. So the continuing offering continues even on Yom Shabbat, plus he wants them to make the offering for Yom Shabbat. Sounds like activity to me. Doesn't sound like they're laying in bed on Yom Shabbat. They have to maintain the continual, what's continual, and then they have to offer the Yom Shabbat sacrifices. You seeing that? Does this continue now? You better believe it spiritually. There's spiritual understanding to this that we have to do. Continual and on Yom Shabbat. See what I'm saying? That's what I'm trying to say. We have to learn to come out of Egypt and cross over. We're the young, we're the children. Okay? We're not the ones that had to die in the wilderness because they were being trained and disciplined. Okay? And they never learned. We're the children that got to cross over. And so there's a whole new meaning in the new covenant, the everlasting covenant, than there was for them. And we need to understand this, and we need to be active. You're no longer part of that old covenant, man. You're not wandering in the wilderness anymore. You are allowed to cross over to the spiritual realm where truth and love resides. Wake up, Netzarim. Wake up. And on the beginnings of your months, you bring near a burnt offering to Yahuah, 2 young bulls and 1 ram and 7 lambs a year old. Perfect ones, 3/10 of an ephah of fine flour as a grain offering mixed with oil for each bull, 2/10 of an ephah of fine flour as a grain offering mixed with oil for the 1 ram, and the 1/10 of the ephah of the fine flour mixed with oil as a grain offering for each lamb, as a burnt offering of sweet fragrance, an offering made by fire to Yahuah. And their drink offering is 1/2 a hin of wine for a bull, and 1/3 of a hin for a ram, and 1/4 of a hin for a lamb. This is the burnt offering for each month throughout the months of the year. And 1 male goat as a sin offering to Yahuah is prepared besides the continual burnt offering and its drink offering. Wow. So there's continual. It is what is continual plus daily now plus monthly. So monthly plus the daily plus the continual. Wow. And in the first month, or on the 14th Yom, is the Passover of Yahuah, and on the 15th Yom of this month is a festival. For 7 Yom, unleavened bread is eaten. On the first Yom is the set apart mikra. You do no servile work. And you shall bring near an offering made by fire as a burnt offering to Yahuah. 2 young bulls, 1 ram, 7 lambs a year old, perfect ones that are for you. They are for you. And their grain offering, fine flour mixed with oil. Prepare 3/10 of an ephah for a bull, 2/10 for a ram. Prepare 1/10 of an ephah for each of the 7 lambs, and 1 goat as a sin offering to make atonement for you. Prepare these besides the burnt offering of the morning, which is for a continual burnt offering. According to these, you are to prepare the food of the offering made by fire daily, 7 days a week. Wow. That includes Yom Shabbat, doesn't it? As a sweet fragrance to Yahuah, it is prepared besides the continual burnt offering and its drink offering, which also is done on Yom Shabbat, isn't it? And on the 7th day, you have a Kadesh Mikra. You do no servile work. And on the Yom of the first fruits, when you bring a new grain offering to Yahuah at your festival of weeks, you have a Kadesh Mikra. You do no servile work. And you shall bring near a burnt offering as a sweet fragrance to Yahuah, 2 young bulls, 1 ram, 7 lambs a year old, with their grain offering of fine flour mixed with oil, 3/10 of an ephah for each bull, 2/10 for the 1 ram, 1/10 for each of the 7 lambs, 1 male goat to make atonement for you. Perfect ones, they are for you. Prepare them with their drink offering besides the continual burnt offering with its grain offering. So this obviously talking about Shabuath, and of course, tradition says that Israelites received the Torah on this day, or the 10 tomorrow. Okay, which we know later on became the pouring out of the Ruach on the 120 in the upper chamber. Okay, so interesting, right? So let's go on over here to 29, where I was trying to get to. So 29 becomes really imperative and important for tabernacles. It goes into Yom Kippur, but it also then it picks up around 17 there for tabernacles. I want to go ahead and read 29 because I think it's extremely important. But I'm not going to. I'm going to skip over Yom Kippur there because I really need to get into the Netzarim writings a little bit more and some confirmation on some of this stuff. So let's start at 29, 12, and then we'll go from there. Okay, this will start us off with tabernacles. Okay, and on the 15th day of the 7th moon, you have a Kadesh Mikra. You do no servile work. So this is day 1. And you shall observe a festival to Yahuah 7 days. And you shall bring near a burnt offering, an offering made by fire, a sweet fragrance to Yahuah. 13 young bulls, 2 rams, 14 lambs a year old, perfect ones. They are in their grain offering, fine flour mixed with oil, 3/10 of an ephah for each of the 13 bulls. 2/10. You see all the activity during these appointed times? Lots of activity. That's what I'm wanting you to see here. Each of 2 rams, 1/10 for each of the 14 lambs, and 1 male goat as a sin offering. Besides the continual burnt offering, its grain offering, and its drink offering. Then on the 2nd day of tabernacles, 12 young bulls, 2 rams, 14 lambs, a year old, perfect ones, and their grain offerings and their drink offerings for the bulls, for the rams, and for the lambs by their number according to the right ruling, and 1 male goat as a sin offering besides the continual burnt offering with its grain offering and their drink offerings. On the 3rd day of tabernacles, or the 3rd day of creation, if you will, the 3rd millennium, 11 bulls, 2 rams, 14 lambs a year old, perfect ones, and their grain offering and their drink offerings for the bulls, for the rams, and for the lambs by their number, according to the right ruling, and 1 goat as a sin offering, besides the continual burnt offering, its grain offering, and its drink offering. Then on the 4th day of Tabernacles, 10 bulls, 2 rams, their grain offering and their drink offerings for the bulls, for the rams, and for the lambs by their number, according to the right ruling, and 1 male goat as a sin offering, besides the continual burnt offering, its grain offering, and its drink offering. See, so this doesn't take the place of the continual offering or the daily offerings or the monthly offering. This is additional to them. So they have to continue to do all those plus these. You see what I'm saying? There's no cancellation here. This is an addition to what they've already been doing. Very clear. Lots of activity, folks, on these appointed times, even the weekly Shabbat. Lots of activity. Then on the 5th day of Tabernacles, 9 bulls, 2 rams, 14 lambs, a year old, perfect ones, and their grain offering and their drink offering for the bulls, for the rams, and for the lambs by their number, according to the right ruling, and 1 goat as a sin offering, besides the continual burnt offering, its grain offering, and its drink offering. On the 6th day of Tabernacles, 8 bulls, 2 rams, 14 lambs, a year old, perfect ones, and their grain offering and their drink offerings for the bulls, for the rams, and for the lambs by their number, according to the right ruling, and 1 goat as a sin offering, besides the continual burnt offering, its grain offering, and its drink offering. On the 7th day of Tabernacles, or the millennium reign, the 7th day, the 7th millennium reign of Yahushua, 7 bulls, 2 rams, 14 lambs a year old, perfect ones, and their grain offering and their drink offerings for the bulls, for the rams, and for the lambs by their number, according to the right ruling, and 1 goat as a sin offering, besides the continual burnt offering, its grain offering, and its drink offering. Whew. We just went through a full week, and I didn't see anybody stopping, hiding in a house, not doing nothing. Did you? I don't see nobody do that. I just saw them doing all these sacrifices and burnt offerings. It's a proclamation. It's we're to worship and pray to Yahuah continual. Okay? It's all about Yahuah and his people, our brothers, our brotherhood. You know, loving Yahuah and loving everybody else. This is what this is all about. This is what we work to do and strive to do every day in the spiritual realm. This is all about denying yourself and loving others above yourself. That's what all this work, all this stuff, okay, was training them to do. We don't have to do all this stuff. We just need to act spiritually as mature recipients of the Ruach HaKodesh dwelling us. We just have to mimic Yahushua, man. Okay, and do all these things daily by feeding those who are hungry, clothing them that are naked, visiting the widows and the orphans in their affliction, visiting those in the hospital and in prisons, feeding the hungry, giving water to the thirsty, and so on and so forth. And denying ourselves, getting rid of our pride in our what we think we're wise. Only Yahuah is wise. Yeah, it's not about religious practices, folks. It's about love. Love covers many sins. Love covers all transgressions. How important do you think it is on the Day of Atonement to perform acts of love? Well, I guarantee you that's what I'll be doing. If I'm alive, Yahuwah's will, that's what I will be doing. I'm not going to be hiding in my house. I'll tell you that right now. I'm going to be going out showing acts of love. I'm being very active, even if it falls on the weekly Shabbat. Don't matter. That door shuts on that day. That's all she wrote. I'm not going to gamble. I'm going to be out there And that brings up another point, really. Do we really, those in the everlasting covenant, those of us who have been born from above, those of us who have been born of Yahuah and sin no more. If you've been begotten of Yahuah, you sin no more. If you have the Ruach HaKodesh living in you, you're powerless to sin. Are we supposed to run around on Yom Kippur and try and be forgiven of our sins? What sins? Our sins have been washed away by the blood of Yahuah. We're now in the everlasting covenant. We're not worrying about ourselves. We're going to deny ourselves, and we're going to go out and help others and show love to others. That's the spiritual thing that we must do now. We don't have to do all this. This was the people that was under training and then bringing discipline. Okay, if we went under training as well, we were under the taskmaster as well, under the Torah. But now we have found love. So love is the completion of the Torah. Now we just go out and love others. We don't have to perform religious rituals anymore. And we don't get to just sit in the house and not do anything either just because the temple was destroyed. Because now we are the temple. So that means we have to do all these activities within ourselves because we are the temple. So the continual burnt offering, the continual offering is our prayers. We pray continual. And all these sacrifices are from our lips and from our heart toward others and Yahuah. Just put it in check, people. Put it in checkmate. All right. So let's look at here at the 8th day. Interesting, isn't it? 8th day, you have an assembly. So it's definitely assembly. You got to come out of your house to assemble. You do no servile work. Don't be a servant. Come out of there, whether you're getting paid for it or you're not not allowed to do any work. That's what servile means. And you shall bring near a burnt offering, an offering made by fire, a sweet fragrance to Yahuah. Notice, one bull. So all these other 7 days, if you count them up, it's like 70 bulls. Okay, but on the 8th day, it's only one bull. One ram. So one bull and one ram. That's it. 7 lambs a year old, perfect ones. Their grain offering and their drink offering for the bull. For the ram and for the lambs by their number according to the right ruling. And 1 goat as a sin offering. Besides the continual burnt offering, its grain offering, and its drink offering. These you prepare to Yahuah at your appointed times. On the appointed day, you do it. We just went through all 8 days. There's no preparation days here, folks. It's on the appointed time. These you prepare to Yahuah at your appointed times. Besides your vowed offerings and your voluntary offerings, as your burnt offerings and your grain offerings and your drink offerings and your peace offerings. And Moses spoke to the children of Yisrael according to all Yahuah had commanded Moses. So our prayer is the continual offering now in the spiritual realm, people. If you're part in the everlasting covenant, your continual burnt offering is your prayer. You're supposed to pray to Yahuah continuously. Our words, okay, we should take our words with us. Our words should be like bulls cast upon the altar of our lips, sacrifice to Yahuah. If you're walking in the spirit and truth, you're hearing what I'm saying. The 8th day is a celebration of immortality. In case you don't know what I'm saying, this is probably the most powerful and maybe most important sector of this study right now. We need to convert all these things we're supposed to do on tabernacles, all 8 days, over into our reality, into the everlasting covenant where we are, into the spiritual realm. We need to get it. So what do we do on tabernacles? Put up a tent and sleep in it all? No. You have to do, there's a lot of activity going on here. Figure it out, man. Okay, so let's take a look at Hosea real quick. So Hosea. Where is Hosea? So Hosea 14:2. Hosea 14:2. Hosea 14:2. So 14:2 says, take words with you. Bam. Take words with you and return to Yahuah. Say to him, take away all crookedness and accept what is good, and we render the bulls of our lips. So there you go. The bulls now are your lips. Okay? You're casting the bulls, cast upon the altar of your lips. You're sacrificing the bulls to Yahuah spiritually. What is continual is your prayers to Yahuah. Okay? Look at Hebrews 13. So Hebrews 13, I know you're all looking for something religious to do. I just know you want to do something religious. It can't be this easy, all right? It's got to be a burden, right? Okay, so Hebrew 13:15. Through him, then, let us continually offer up a slaughter offering of praise to Yahuah. So there you go. That's continually a slaughter offering of praise to Yahuah. That is the fruit of our lips. The fruit of our lips, giving thanks to his name. And do not forget to do good. To do good and to share. That sounds like to me it's involving other people. For with such slaughter offerings, Yahuah is well pleased. Yeah. Look at Proverbs. Y'all should be getting it now. I mean, should see it now. But we'll continue on just a little bit longer on it. Proverbs 18, 20 and 21. Says, a man's stomach is satisfied from the fruit of his mouth. He is satisfied with the increase of his lips. Death and life are in the power of the tongue, and those loving it eat its fruit. Boom. Lots of praise, worship, sacrifice coming out of the bulls of your lips, man. All right. So if you go to Matthew 15, it goes much farther than what's coming out of our lips, okay? It actually points out that what comes out of your lips, your pure, perfect sacrifice, it begins in your heart. Okay, so it's a huge part of the understanding when you're doing it out of love, rather than because you have to or because you feel like you're obligated or something, you know. So Matthew 15, explains it fairly well. And it says, Matthew 15, 1 through 20, really. But there came to be there came to Yahushua scribes and Pharisees from Jerusalem, saying, why do your Talmudim transgress the tradition of the elders? For they do not wash their hands when they eat bread. But he answering said to them, why do you also transgress the command of Elohim because of your tradition? For Elohim has commanded, saying, respect your father and your mother, and he who curses father and mother, let him be put to death. But you say, whoever says to his father or mother, whatever profit you might have received from me has been dedicated, is certainly released from respecting his father or his mother, so you have nullified the command of Yahuah, of Elohim, by your tradition. Hypocrites, Yeshayahu rightly prophesied about you, saying, this people draw near to me with their mouth and respect me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. So even though you're doing this, giving the sacrifice of the bulls of your lips, okay, your heart is far from him. He's not going to accept you or the sacrifice of the bulls of your lips. Why? Because it's unclean, it's blemished, it's impure. That's why he wants a clean bull with no spots, no wrinkles, no blemishes, pure, clean. Okay, see that? So you can have unclean lips because of what's coming from your heart. This is what he's explaining here in this parable. So they respect me with their lips, with their mouth, and respect me with their lips. They draw near to me with their mouth and respect me with their lips, but their heart is far from me. So you can't just do it to think it's going to get you somewhere. If you're not doing it out of the pureness of your heart, the goodness of your heart, the love in your heart for Yahuah, he's not buying it. But in vain do they worship me. In vain they worship me. See, it's vain. It's not going to do you no good, man. Teaching is teachings, the commands of men. Celebrating the appointed times or Yom Shabbat based on tradition is not going to get you anywhere, folks. You got to understand what's going on here, especially in our time. If you're part of the everlasting covenant, you got to get it. You can't live in the literal world, man, and you're a spiritual child. It ain't going to get you nowhere. Okay? But in vain do they worship me. Teaching is teachings, the commands of men. Doing tradition, stuff that's traditions, not commanded by Yahuah. You're not getting it. And calling the throng near, he said to them, hear and understand. Not that which goes into the mouth defiles the man, but that which comes out of the mouth, this defiles the man. Then his Talmud came and said to him, do you know that the Pharisees stumbled when they heard this word? But he answering said, every plant which my heavenly Father has not planted shall be uprooted. Leave them alone. They are blind leaders of the blind. And if the blind leads the blind, both shall fall into a ditch. See, you have to get it, man. You got to get away from the traditions of men, the literal understanding that was going on back during the training process. And Kepha answering said to him, explain this parable to us. And Yahushua said, are you also still without understanding? Do you not understand that whatever enters into the mouth goes into the stomach and is cast out into the sewer? But what comes out of the mouth comes from the heart, and these defile the man. For out of the heart comes forth wicked reasonings, murders, adulteries, whorings, thefts, false witnessing, slanders. These defile the man, but to eat with unwashed hands does not defile the man. Wow. That was a huge eye opener. So now I hope we were able to see the translation between the literal into the spiritual according to these appointed times now. Okay, we got to draw a line somewhere and advance beyond it. Okay, we can't dwell in the literal realm if we're part of the everlasting covenant, folks. We crossed over. They did not. All right, so is there any proof or any evidence at all of people observing the Festival of Tabernacles in the Nazarene writings, or what Christianity calls the New Testament? And the answer is yes. Yes, it does. It's really quite apparent in Revelations. But besides Revelations, John 12 is a humongous source that teaches about the Feast of Tabernacles. So let's go to look at John 7. Go to John 7, if you will. So John 7 is rather lengthy, but extremely powerful stuff. So it says, and after this, Yahushua was walking in Galilee, for he did not wish to walk in Yehuda, because the Yehudim were seeking to kill him. And the festival of the Yehudim was near, the festival of Succoth, or Tabernacles. So his brother said to him, get away from here and go into Yehuda, so that your pupils also see the works that you are doing. For no one acts in secret while he himself seeks to be known openly. If you do these works, show yourself to the world. For even his brothers did not believe in him. So even his brothers didn't believe that he was Yahuah. Because only Yahuah could do the works that Yahushua was doing. And only Yahuah could forgive sins, which Yahushua was also doing. So his brothers were mad. They didn't believe he was Yahuah. Because he was their brother, and so they're messing with him. They're mocking him right here and now. Okay. So Yahushua therefore said to them, my time has not come yet, but your time is always ready. It is impossible for the world to hate you, but it hates me because I bear witness of it, that its works are wicked. You go up to the festival. I am not yet going up to the festival. So even Yahushua called it a festival. For my time has not yet been concluded. And having said this to them, he stayed in Galilee. But when his brothers had gone up to the festival, then he also went up, not openly, but as it was in secret. The Yehudim therefore were seeking him at the festival and said, where is he? And there was much grumbling about him among the throng. Some were saying he is good, but others were saying no, but he is leading the multitude astray. However, no one spoke openly of him for fear of the Yehudim. And about the middle of the festival, Yahushua went up into the set-apart place, and he was teaching. So about the middle of the festival, I would say about the middle of the day, on the first day of Tabernacles. I think this is what that's suggesting, which would have been a Sabbath, right? So he was walking around, hiding, sneaking around. He went from where he was at, and so did his brothers, and walked to Jerusalem to celebrate the festival. So about the middle of the festival, now it could be in the middle of the week of the festival, but it sounds like it was still on the first day. Okay, but at any rate, and the Yehudim were marveling, saying, how does this man know letters, not having learned? Yahusha answered them and said, my teaching is not mine, but his who sent me. If anyone desires to do his desire, he shall know concerning the teaching, whether it is from Elohim or I speak from myself. He who speaks from himself is seeking his own esteem, but he who seeks the esteem of the one who sent him is true, and no unrighteousness is in him. Did not Moshe give you the Torah? Yet not one of you does the Torah. Why do you seek to kill me? And the multitude answered and said, you have a demon. Who seeks to kill you. You have a demon. Who seeks to kill you? So they're acting like they don't know what he's talking about, but yet he knows what they're trying to do. Yahusha answered and said to them, I did one work, and you all marvel. Because of this, Moshe has given you the circumcision, though it is not from Moshe, but from the fathers. And you circumcise a man on the Shabbat. He circumcised a man on the Shabbat. If a man receives circumcision on the Shabbat, so that the Torah of Moshe should not be broken, are you angry with me because I made a man entirely well on the Shabbat? So they circumcised a man on the Shabbat, but they're condemning him for healing a man completely on Shabbat, which they're perceiving to be what? Work. But yet he didn't get paid to do that. See that? He didn't get paid to do that. Do not judge according to appearance, but judge with righteous judgment. Therefore, some of them from Jerusalem said, is this not he whom they are seeking to kill? And see, he speaks boldly, and they say nothing at all to him. Could it be that the rulers truly know that this is truly the Mashiach? But we know where this one is from. And when the Mashiach comes, no one knows where he is from. Yahusha therefore cried out in the Kadesh place, teaching and saying, you both know me, and you know where I am from, and I have not come of myself, but he who sent me is true, whom you do not know. But I know him because I am from him, and he sent me. There you go. Firstborn of all creation, for sure. This is his body of light, who's the firstborn of all creation, transformed into flesh. And Yahuah remained in his body, even as it was translated into flesh and walked among us. So they were seeking to seize him. Yahushua said, I'm the light of the world. So they were seeking to seize him, but no one laid a hand on him because his hour had not come yet. And many of the masses believed in him and said, when the Mashiach comes, shall he do more signs than these which this one did? The Prushim heard the multitude muttering this concerning him, and the Prushim and the chief priests sent officers to seize him. Therefore, Yahuah said to them, yet a little while I am with you, then I go to him who sent me. You shall seek me, and you shall not find me, and where I am, you are unable to come. The Yehudim therefore said to themselves, where is he about to go, that we shall not find him? Is he about to go to the dispersion among the Greeks, and to teach the Greeks? What is this word which he said? You shall seek me, and shall not find me, and where I am, you are unable to come. And on the last Yom, the great Yom of the festival, now this would be the 8th day, Yahusha stood and cried out, saying, if anyone thirsts, let him come to me, and let him who believes in me drink. As the scripture said, out of the innermost shall flow rivers of living water, the water of life, man. And this he said concerning the Ruach, which those believing in him were about to receive. For the Ruach Hadesh was not yet given, because Yahushua was not yet esteemed. Yeah, so this is very powerful. So 7 days, for the first 7 days of the Festival of Tabernacles, the priests would go to a pool, and they would dip in and get the waters of life, living waters, out of the pool, and the people would go with them and watch them. Then they'd go back up and dump it, and as the people were screaming, Hushanu, deliver me, crying out to Yahuah for deliverance. Okay, they didn't do it on the 8th day. So it seems to me here then, it says after on the last Yom, the great Yom of the first great day of the festival, Yahushua stood up and cried out. In other words, they don't go get the water on the 8th day. So Yahushua stood up on the 8th day and was telling them, I'm the water of life, man. And so he let them know on that day to drink the living waters. He's the living water. Very powerful, really. Okay, so that was all part of that, the celebration of the festival. He did it every morning for the first 7 days, but not on the 8th. So no doubt when they didn't go get the living water, the water of life that morning, just when Yahushua cried out and said, those believing in him were about to receive the Ruach HaKodesh, which was the living waters. But it has not been given yet because Yahuah was not esteemed. See that? So the Ruach HaKodesh is the living waters. You must drink the living waters in order to be delivered, man, in order to be part of the everlasting covenant. Okay, so many from the crowd, when they heard the word, then said, this truly is a prophet. Others said, this is the Mashiach, but others said, does the Mashiach come out of Galilee? Did not the scripture say that the Mashiach comes from the seed of Daud and from the village of Bethlehem, where Daud was? So a division came about among the people because of him, and some of them wished to take him, but no one laid hands on him. The officers therefore came to the chief priest and the Prushim, and they said to them, why did you not bring him? The officers answered, never has any man spoken like this man. The Prushim therefore answered them, have you also been led astray? Has any one of the rulers or of the Prushim believed in him? But this crowd that does not know the Torah is accursed. Nicodemus, who came to Yahushua by night, being one of them, said to them, does our Torah judge the man unless it hears first from him and knows what he is doing? They answered and said to him, are you also from Galilee? Search and see that no prophet has arisen from out of Galilee. And each one went to his own house. So there you go. There's proof that Yahushua attended the Feast of Tabernacles in John 7. And it actually was very powerful visitation as well, observance of the festival of Sukkot. Jumps out at me here as he was teaching, during that he was teaching scriptures, and then he indicated that he was the living waters, and the people hollering out during that water ceremony for the first 7 days, save us, deliver us, Hushanu, and the deliverer was right there with them. Really amazing, really. So that, and let me see, we can look at John 12. John 12, in verse 12 and 13, it says, on the next Yom, a great multitude who had come to the festival, when they heard that Yahushua was coming to Jerusalem, took the branches of palm trees and went out to meet him, and were crying out, Hoshanu, Hoshanu, blessed is he who is coming in the name of Yahuah, the sovereign of Yesharal. So here they're asking him to deliver them, and they got palm trees, branches of palm trees, Remember, they were laying him down as he was riding the colt of a donkey through the streets of him coming into the city of Jerusalem. This was no doubt the festival of booths, tabernacles. You saw remember the four species that represents the four different Yehudim type people, and the palm tree or the date palm branches, the lulav was in part of that wave. Remember, and so anytime you see in palm branches in Scripture, it's a pretty good indication what festival it is. So in this particular festival must have been a festival of Sukkot, I would guess. Possibility. So anyway, go to, let's see now, how about, let's look at this. Let's go ahead and go to Revelations. Let's sort of shorten this up a little bit now. Been on for a while. I think y'all are getting a little bit more information about tabernacles than maybe you've been told before. And that was the goal. So let's get over into Revelations one time and look at Revelation 7. 7, 9. Real quick. Probably Revelation 7, 9. Maybe to the end. Down to the end. Okay, so here we go. After this, I looked and saw a great throng, which no one was able to count, out of all nations and tribes and peoples and tongues, standing before the throne and before the Lamb, dressed in white robes and palm branches in their hands, and crying out with a loud voice saying, deliverance belongs to our Yahuah, who sits on the throne, and to the Lamb. So here we see they have palm branches in their hands. So this could be showing that the reference from tabernacles over into the millennium reign. Because they're standing there dressed in white robes, standing before the throne. See what I'm saying? A great throng. So this could be them celebrating this. So after the second coming into the millennium reign, celebrating tabernacles and millennium reign. Palm branches in their hands. See that? And crying out with a loud voice, deliverance. See that? Deliverance belongs to our Yahuah, who sits on the throne, and to the Lamb. And all the messengers stood around the throne and the elders and the 4 living creatures, and fell on their faces before the throne and worshiped Yahuah, saying, Amen. The blessing and the esteem and the wisdom and the thanksgiving and the respect and the power and the might to our Yahuah forever and ever. Amen. And one of the elders responded, saying to me, who are these dressed in white robes, and where did they come from? And I said to him, Master, you know. And he said to me, these are those coming out of the great distress. So other than that, if they're coming out of the great distress, then that means the tribulation, 3.5 years of tribulation. So this must be after the second coming of Yahusha, and this is a representation here now of the millennium reign and the celebrating the Festival of Tabernacles during the millennium reign. Has to be, man, because it's out of the great distress. Having washed their robes and made them white in the blood of the Lamb. Because of this, they are before the throne of Yahuah and serve him day and night in his temple. And he who sits on the throne shall spread his tent over them. Spread his tent over them in the millennium reign. Tabernacles, his tent. They shall hunger no more, neither thirst no more, nor shall sun strike them, because his tents be over them. We know there's not going to be a sun in eternity. It tells us that there will be no need for the sun and the moon in eternity, right? So we know this is then, it has to be during the millennium reign, because the Lamb who is in the midst of the throne shall shepherd them and lead them to fountains of man of life. And Yahushua shall wipe away every tear from their eyes. Lead them to the fountains of man. Remember what he said on the 8th day, that he was the living waters. Fountains of water would gush from their belly. All right, so they would be totally filled with the Ruach HaKodesh, man, in the millennium, right? Powerful stuff right here. It's definitely representation here, symbolic of the millennium reign, no doubt. Can't hardly deny that. And then let's look at Revelations 14 real quick. So Revelations 14, going back to the lady that was questioning the 144,000. Go to Revelations 14, 1 through 5. It says, and I looked and I saw a lamb standing on Mount Zion, which is in Jerusalem, and with him 144,000, having his father's name written upon their foreheads. So here we have, this has to be after the second coming. And I heard a voice out of the heaven like a voice of many waters and like the voice of loud thunder. And I heard the sound of harpists playing their harps. And they sang a new song before the throne and before the 4 living creatures and the elders. And no one was able to learn that song except for the 144,000 who were redeemed from the Eretz. They were redeemed. And they were paid for, bought and paid for, and then now he took possession of them. He redeemed his property from the Eretz. They are those who were not defiled with women, for they are maidens. They are those following the Lamb wherever he leads them on. They were redeemed from among men, being first fruits to Yahuah and to the Lamb. And in their mouth was found no falsehood, for they are blameless before the throne of Yahuah. So here you go, man. This is the harvest. This is talking about the harvest of the wheat right here. Before this happens here, the 144,000 happens before the harvest. Okay, before. So this is what the first resurrection or the harvest. It's the harvest of the wheat that happens before the millennium reign, what I should say. Okay. And then we know that the ones that were received the Ruach HaKodesh then were cleaned up. The blood of the Lamb has the power to return them to virgin status. They have no blemish, no spot, no wrinkle. They're pure. They're white. They're pure. You know, red is the color of sin. Your sins will be, though your sins are like scarlet, they will be white as snow. Okay, so they've been cleaned up beyond filth. They're no longer dirty, man. The power of the blood has the ability to return these people back into their virgin status before they sinned, when they're clean from sin. Clean them up. Powerful, man. Very powerful stuff. Okay, so this kind of indicates then, to us, and it's showing us the connection between the millennium reign and the Feast of Tabernacles, if you will. Okay. Let me see. Finally, let's get over here to Zechariah one time. So Zechariah, I always have a hard time finding Zechariah for some reason. So Zechariah 14. Zechariah 14. And 16 through 19. So Zechariah 14, 16 through 19 says, and it shall be that all who are left from all the nations which came against Jerusalem shall go up from year to year to bow themselves to the sovereign Yahuah Sabaoth and to observe the festival of Succoth. So this is saying all those who are left of the nations which came up against Jerusalem, that's the battle of Armageddon. So this happens after the second coming of Yahusha. This is the millennium reign here, okay? And it shall be that if anyone of the clans of the Eretz does not come up to Jerusalem to bow himself to the sovereign, so there's going to be clans on the Eretz, there's going to be nations and leaders, bow himself to the sovereign, Yahuah Sabaoth, on them there is to be no rain. There's going to be no rain. There's going to be no living waters for them. This is happening during the millennium reign. See that? And if the clan of Mitzrayim does not come up and enter in, then there is no rain. On them is the plague with which Yahuah plagues the nations who do not come up to observe the festival of Succoth. This is during the millennium reign. So it's going to, as long as flesh and blood exists, which it does in the millennium reign, we're going to be celebrating the festival of Succoth. Why? Because we're still in our temporary dwelling tents. The people are still going to be in their fleshly bodies. You ain't got immortality yet. Only the first resurrection group has immortality. The ones who had died in Mashiach and the ones who remained at the time of his second coming, who was changed in the wink of an eye and given immortality, they'll have immortality, but everybody else is still being their flesh. Fleshly temporal booths, temporal tents. Okay. This is the punishment of Mitzrayim and the punishment of all the nations that do not come up to observe the festival of Succoth. In that Yom, is set apart to Yahuah. Yahuah shall be engraved on the bells of the horses, and the pots in the house of Yahuah shall be like the bowls before the altar. And every pot in Jerusalem and in Yehudah shall be set apart to Yahuah Sabaoth. And all those who slaughter shall come and take them and cook in them. And there shall no longer be a Canaanite in the house of Yahuah Sabaoth in that Yom. Okay, so what's that said? Everything's in the millennium reign, everything belongs to Yahuah. It does now, but men thinks it belongs to them, but it don't. All right, so everything's going to belong to Yahuah and the millennium reign. And you see there's such a close relationship to the festival of Succoth and the millennium reign. It's not even funny. And we're going to learn a whole lot more about that as we venture into our study of Revelations on Zoom at noon. So if anybody wants to join us, it should be a really fantastic study that it's going to probably take a month or two to get through it. But don't miss it. Maybe the best study of Revelations you've ever seen. So don't miss it. Starting next week, or starting tomorrow, I should say. All right. So that, I think, concludes our little study and our conversation about the Feast of Tabernacles. And I can't really think of any other points to make other than it's all about the seventh day, or the seventh millennium, really. It's all about the millennium reign. Because once that seventh day is over, then Yahuah will be tabernacling with men through the millennium reign. Once that's over, it's all shiro, folks. No more flesh and blood. Flesh and blood cannot go any further than that 7,000th year. Once that 7,000 year comes and goes, it's over. Okay, there'll be a new heaven and a new earth, a new city filled with nothing but immortal beings. That's it. Will be no immortal beings, no flesh and blood, just immortality. for eternity. No death, no anything after that. So this is what we're dealing with during Tabernacles now. The first 7 days represents us dwelling in our fleshly temporal tents, okay, the lifespan of a man, or the 7 days of creation, the seventh day being the millennium reign, where flesh and blood remains, and then the white throne judgment. The eighth day comes, and that represents immortality. We do not stay in our tents. We do not wave the lulav on the eighth day. We celebrate and rejoice, laugh, sing, dance to Yahuah, praise Yahuah, worship Yahuah, give him the bull, the sacrifice of the bulls of our lips from deep in our heart with pure love to him and to the brotherhood. And we celebrate, and dance, and rejoice, and laugh, and just be totally happy. Because what are we celebrating on that eighth day? Immortality, eternity with Yahuah. So we don't stay in our tents on that eighth day. Do not do that. It's separate from the 7 days, but it is a Shabbat. It's connected, but yet it's a separate festival. Because there's no flesh and blood involved. In the first 7 days, there's flesh and blood involved. That's why it's separate from them 7 days, but yet it is a Sabbath, if you will. No work. All righty, so I think that's it. Like I said, tomorrow we're going to go into we're going to begin our study in Revelations. So be there or be square. And remember to stay in love with Yahushua HaMashiach. So long, Natzarim, beloved of Yahuah. So long, everybody. See you next week. See a bunch of you tomorrow.